All right, welcome back. Here we've got Dean Krippaehne. We're going to be talking about, his next book that he's written, Write, Submit, Forget, and Repeat, which sounds really intriguing. So I'm excited about that. But the main question I wanted to ask you in this video is, what is a way that composers like ourselves can diversify ourselves? Like, what would you kind of suggest to those kind of things? Like, because I know that we both got friends, that are live performances, that do live performances, and with this COVID-19, as we're recording this, you've got like bars are closed, restaurants closed, a lot of churches are closed, a lot of venues that people play at, and so their income could have, 100% of the money could be gone, or 50%. So what's a way that you've diversified yourself to cover yourself from kind of that, and you could recommend to other composers and music people?
I think, yeah, and you're so right. And actually, in my first book, I do talk about diversification. Anybody that's an investor in the stock market or in real estate or all that. I mean, you always, diversification keeps you solid through bad times. Right now, at least in my area, people that are heavily invested in the stock market, well, the stock market with COVID went way down for a while, and hopefully it'll come back up eventually. But right now, real estate's still kind of hanging in there in the area where I live. So if you've diversified just in those two things, well, you're kind of okay, because hey, if I had to sell this real estate over here, I could. And then I think the same thing in music, like you say, what we've are involved in, man. If you were making most of your living from, and there was a time in my life where I did make a large part of my living from playing live. My wife and I were talking about the other night when we first got married. I was playing in clubs 6 nights a week, and she was serving in a restaurant and cocktail lounges. We'd be screwed money-wise right now, because both restaurants are closed. There's no more playing live gigs, and so we'd be, really searching. So, I think it's important to diversify, and there's ways to do it. I know that I'll just speak to some friends of mine that play live gigs. They're also trying to learn how to do the cues and stuff that we're doing. They're also teaching, and some of them have been teaching out of their house, but now they've moved on to teaching online. They're teaching guitar, keyboards, or whatever. I think that's really viable. It's a new skill to learn. In fact, I'm watching one of my daughters who's grown now. She teaches elementary school, and they're shut down, but they're learning how to teach the entire class, entire curriculum online with all the kids. And wow. It's a huge learning curve, but sometimes we have to do that. We have to learn new skills, and we do new stuff. And she's really scraping to learn this, as well as some of our friends that are teaching online, that have maybe they've been teaching guitar to 20 or vocal to 20 or 30 students a week. They don't want to lose that income, and their students want to keep learning. So they're figuring out how to do it through Zoom or through Skype or through the tools that we have online now. And I think there's, in the skills that you're learning there, I've even thought about this for what I do. So suppose I'm teaching somebody how to do to write a cue like I did on Duck Dynasty, like a Southern rock cue, or a tension cue. Why not do little videos? I will probably offer them for free, but if you did a 10-minute cue on how to make cues, and learned how to do all the video stuff and uploaded that in a really cool way, and offered maybe 5 different genres for $1, somebody can download for $1. Well, I don't want to make $1. Well, wait a minute. The whole world is your market. What's $1 times 100,000 people that might download it? Well, that's $100,000. So there are those types of ways that I think we can we can make money. I know people that are doing, my brother's done a few of them, online, online stuff. I don't know what all the venues, I know Stage It has one. I know there are other venues for online where you can ask for tips or whatever,
Yeah.
ask for requests. You know, there's a lot of ways, even within music, that we can diversify and do other things. I've always done music, but I've always done 3 or 4 or 5 things within music. You know, I ran a recording studio in the late 80s and early 90s up here in Seattle, and was making money recording other people, um,
Wow.
along with playing live, along with writing and doing my stuff. You know, we are creative people as by nature in music and writing and producing. Sometimes we may have to create in a way we didn't know we had to create,
Yeah.
developing
Yeah.
new jobs for ourselves. And I think there's you know, I've only touched on a few. I think there's a variety of things that we can invent and do. You just, you know, have to
Mhm.
go get over your sadness of losing this thing that you've lost, and work through that mood and go, okay, now let me get to work and start creating some new, and try some new things. You know,
Yeah.
try different things and see which sticks, which works, you
That's
know.
right. That's great advice. And so so is it possible for like the composers, is it possible for them to have like a diversified catalog at all? Like is it possible, like if you're just a rock guy, it, can you diversify, or what would you
Yeah,
suggest to
yeah,
somebody?
I think you can. You know, I mean, and I know you've given this advice before, and I too. When we're first starting in doing music and anything, you know, those 2 things that we're the best at, do those. Do what you're what you sound best at. Do those, and you'll get in the doors that way. But once you're in the doors, I immediately started diversifying, and um, you know, as I tell everybody in music, in a music scale, there's only 12 notes. You know, how tough can it be? I mean, it is tough, but there's
Yeah.
12 notes, and whether you're doing blues or hip hop or EDM or tension or rock or country, it's the same 12 notes. They have vastly different vibes and feels to them, but and so you need to learn those. But yeah, diversify. I early on, when I got in, I had turned down a couple things because I thought it was all orchestration. I really didn't do strings and didn't do orchestra. And then, you know, but then I started tiptoeing into like string quartet, you know, a couple violins, viola, and a cello, and against a piano, acoustic piano, and went, wow, I can do this. Actually, one of the examples in my Demystifying the Genre book, I'd never studied classical music in my life, but I realized that just by the virtue of being alive for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that I've heard classical music all in tons of movies and tons of, it's in here, it's in here somewhere. So I decided I was going to try classical music, and I thought I'd start simple, just doing classical piano. And I cannot play classical piano. Okay, I can play jazz piano, but I cannot. I wouldn't sit down to play classical piano. So what I did, I listened to a lot of classical piano and realized that I could hear those melodies and those arpeggiated piano pieces in my head. And so I sat down to write some and went, okay, I can't play that fast. I can't play that. So I just slowed everything down and you know, recorded the left hand and the piano really slow. And then I recorded the melody I was hearing in my head way faster. I recorded that slow, and then I sped it up. And oh yeah, and then I added a little more in between because I can't play all that at the same time. And then I was so out of time, but that I had to quantize it all,
Yeah.
so that, you know, and sped it up. And I went, man, that's a classical piece, but it sounds totally mechanical because I quantized. I made everything perfect. So then I pulled it all out of quantizing, and it started to sound more realistic. And then I, excuse me, then I programmed a piano pedal to it, because all you'd hear the pedal in all live piano
Yeah. Yeah.
classical music. And added space and broke those things apart. And you know, the first one took about 10 hours because you know, I had to learn how to do it. But at the end, I figured out how to do it, and I could probably do in 3 hours. I can do a classical piano piece now, and
Wow.
lo and behold, some of those pieces have been used in TV shows, now in a couple ads. Because classic, why would I do classical? Well, any elegant product, you know, if you're selling a Rolex watch, if you're selling a Lexus car, if you're selling you know, any luxury item, man, that just screams for any genre of classical music.
Yeah.
You know, so I probably won't do a lot of it because it's not as natural to me, but I was really happy to have gotten over that hump. So yeah, I think you can, you know, I always tell people, do what you do best first, but then, yeah, learn how to do something, this one, experiment in this genre, learn how to study it, reverse engineer it, learn how to get really good at it, and match it. And there are people that have gone before us that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on any genre, and they have albums, and we can listen to that stuff and try to match our stuff up. Our sounds, does our kick sound as good? Does it sound right? Does our snare, does our bass guitar, do all these things and match them up? That's our template, is what somebody that's gone before us has done, and you try to raise our bar up to that level, and without copying them, because we don't want to get sued for copyright infringement, but you know, just try to raise our bar to that level. That the templates are all out there of those who have gone before us.
That's really cool. I like that. It's like, you know, sometimes a lot of in our industry, you know, when you're talking about templates, my mind goes, and probably many other producers, their mind goes to, oh yeah, my template in Pro Tools, yeah, I'll go there. But what you're saying is the albums, you know, iTunes, those are templates, and that's brilliant. That's really cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely, man. iTunes, Spotify, any whatever you're using to listen to stuff, man. You want to produce that style of music, that you want to do that pop country Luke Bryan thing or whatever it is. Well, go and listen to 10 of his tunes and figure out what he's doing. Figure out what drums and bass, guitar, banjos, you know, what they're doing. Figure out the chord structures and the songs that are to whatever contemporary pop style that you're doing. Figure out what the melodies are doing. You know, I've fallen in love with this girl named Billie Eilish.
Yeah. Who?
yeah. I mean, I'm just her stuff is just, it's so intriguing to me as one of the new artists out there. So I'm just listening to this all the time. I don't know yet that I wouldn't say I've captured how to write that stuff. And of course, I have to find the right vocalist to emulate that style. But man, that's what you do. You go and listen and you study, and then you find the right people to get that kind of vibe that you want to get. So
yeah,
in any genre.
And Adrian, and the coolest thing is once you discover, or, you know, everyone now who's listening to it, if you'd write down what Dean just said, you know, that's a trick, or that's a tip, or that's a fundamental that you can do for the rest of your life. Because when you're 99 and you know, you can still be cranking out music if you use that tool. You know, your music doesn't have to sound like 100 years old. You know, it can sound like the current latest things if you just use your ears. That's brilliant. I think that's really cool, Dean.
Yeah.
So now, should I just write one song and or do I submit it somewhere? And how do I repeat this process? Like,
you repeat it the same way you did it the first time. Once you get that song, people ask me often, you know, should I do a whole CD of tension tracks or of pop songs or whatever genre they're in? And I say, you know, do one or two of your best ones and pitch them to publishing companies, to music libraries, to music supervisors, if you know that they're looking for that genre and if you're professional about it. But what I always tell people, though, if you get the publishing deal with the library and they like two of your things and they want them, always ask them if you can do more. Man, from the get-go, if somebody signed one or two of my tracks, I go, man, I can do more. Do you want more? I'd love to do more, I can do a whole CD for you. And
Yeah.
quite often they might not say do a whole CD, but they might say, yes, do 3 more, do 4 more.
Mm-hmm.
And why would I want to do that? Because the more songs I have in that library, the more opportunities I have of getting that stuff placed in TV shows or in films or in ads.
Yeah.
I had a company, because of the success of Duck Dynasty, and I had done a lot of Southern rock tracks, which, by the way, I'd never done a Southern rock track before that show in my life.
Really?
No, I'd never done, but I
So I
did.
guess you nailed it.
I'm just bad enough guitar player to be able to play that type of jangly stuff. But because I got kind of known as one of the guys that was doing those tracks for them, I had a lot of offers, a lot of people asking me to do. In fact, I had one company, I won't say, but they in a pinch, there were a bunch of new shows coming out that were using that kind of music at that time. And they were just desperate for those types of tracks. And they said, hey, can you do some more of these tracks for us? I said, sure, yeah, I can. I said, I could probably do 10 or those in a couple of weeks, and maybe even less time. And I said, well, how many do you need? And they said, well, we need 100 cues. And I said, well, when do you need them? They said, within the next 2 weeks.
You're kidding me.
So, I will never overpromise. So I said, listen, I can.
You're crazy.
I know I can just crank down on this, but I can only, I can do 10 a week, but that's the max I can do. I will give you as many as I can give, but I'm not going to promise you, because the last thing I want to do is overpromise and get in somebody's bad side. But that can happen if you get hot on a certain thing and some people know about you in a particular genre. They'll, if they're desperate, if this particular company, multiple shows were looking for that at that particular time, because in a genre of TV shows that got hot for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do 100, but no, I wasn't going to overpromise. So I think I ended up doing about 40.
Gosh, that's a lot.
Yeah, the same thing. It's Southern rock is basically a riff and a garage band, with a B3 organ and a blues harp. How do I make that new 40 times?
I know that is quite hard for anybody who's done only composers know that, even doing an album of 10 songs on the same kind of, or it's like you're repeating some of the same lyrics and you're like, I can't say that again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Especially in a short time, because your headspace and your life is all about, and all your riffs and everything is about now. Yep. It's kind of like you're gonna have to get creative with inspiration and stuff. So. Yeah. So is that what you talk now in your book, Write, Submit, Forget, and Repeat? Is that what you kind of talk about, like just kind of like doing it many times, and then who do you submit to? Or you're talking about your publisher, or and then obviously forget it.
Yeah, I think you submit to, you have to do the research, and one of the reasons, you submit to, you can find out who the music libraries are, and ask them if you can submit. There are some that you can submit online. I'm not going to give out any names here, but do your research and you'll be able to find those online. And the same with music libraries, with publishers, with music supervisors. You can find all that stuff online. I think one good way to get into the business is to find, and this is one reason why I love some of the conferences that you and I have talked about before. You can go and meet other people, like-minded people that are doing the same stuff, and maybe you meet somebody and you connect with them and you just have a good, fun vibe with them, and they've already got a couple tunes in a library, or maybe a couple CDs, and you might be able to collaborate with them on a song or so, and then boom, they're doing in the library, and now you're in the library. Now you have an open door. You can say, hey, can I pitch some more stuff to you? I've already got 2 tunes in your music library, in your publishing company. I think that's a very viable way. But again, it's about networking and relationships and being professional. I don't, in the Write, Submit, Forget, Repeat book that I wrote, that book is less about that stuff. In fact, I always say that book is not what musicians want. it's what they need. It has to do more with the things that stop us from doing the work. It's more to do with cognitive distortions. It's more of almost a mental health kind of approach, and that some of us, many of us writers, composers, can get into some very negative moods and attitudes, and even come up against roadblocks where we can't write and produce anymore. And it really addresses more of that type of stuff. And people go, well, how do you know about that stuff, Dean? Well, I've been very open. I used to run a website in 1990 or 1991, I was diagnosed with panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety. I had a bunch of mental illness stuff that I went through years of psychotherapy for. And I learned all that stuff, and it all applies to depression. It applies to all of the major psychological things that can trip us up in life. And even people that don't have that illness, people still have moods and stuff that stops them. So I've used that knowledge to help artists, all artists in general. The book's wasn't written just with music in mind. It's written for all creatives, whether you're an artist, an actor, a musician, a songwriter, whatever, an entrepreneur. It's written with that in mind, and trying to overcome and how to deal with those issues. So, but yeah, back to the pitching stuff. Who do I pitch to? Just do your research. You can and connect with people. Connect with people, because you will. I mean, I was telling a friend of ours, Michael Lasko, just the other day, said one thing I love about the Taxi Rally is that every time I go there, I make money. And because every time I go there, I'm just hanging out with people, and I find a couple more libraries that I wasn't aware about, a couple more publishers, or maybe a music supervisor that says I can pitch stuff to them, or that they ask me if I have a certain kind of music, and I do, or I go and make it, and I end up making money. So those relationships.
Yeah. That's really good. And I really like what you're saying about, the write, submit, forget, repeat, because I think that can go over into everything. If you're if you're building a business on, like, I don't know, construction, the way you've met the client and you've done it, you then repeat it. You do the next client, and you keep getting better, but you can't just stop. You can't just be like, okay, so you get it. So I think that's really cool, and I really like what you're saying about that. But that's
it's important. I have a startup tech company that I partnered in 7 years ago, and it's been a 7-year struggle, daily struggle to grow this thing, and to try to get over that hump. And if I, I mean, and we're really close to getting over that hump. But you can give up at any point. But if you give up, well, you ain't gonna get what you're looking for, that pot of gold at the end.
No, that's right. That's so true. Well, cool. Well, as we're wrapping up, just for anybody who wants to know, Demystifying the Cue and Demystifying the Genre, and write, submit, forget, repeat. I'm going to have links down the bottom. You can get them on Amazon, because I know a lot of people probably want to know where they can purchase those books. And gosh, you've been in the industry for over 20 years. Well, even longer than that, because you've been, you're a record producer before that. So what, 30 plus years in the
I was probably even longer than I want to admit. But yeah, all that stuff, man. I was out there gigging 6 nights a week. I had it up one time. I don't do live shows anymore. I haven't for years, but I've done over 4,000 shows back in the 6 night a week day. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of vocal wear and tear when you're singing 4 or 5 hours every night,
Yeah, I was actually doing that for, I think, a handful of years ago. I was doing that, gigging every night, and I started feeling my voice kind of like really kind of getting trashed a bit. And so that's when I really I kind of pulled the reins back a little bit, and I got some vocal training under another guy. I won't mention his name, but he taught Taylor Swift and Keith Urban, so he knew what he was doing, and he definitely charged like he knew what he was doing too. But that's fine. And I had to relearn how to sing, because it's like I was trashing my voice every night, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah. No, and that's really important too. And for all of the singers out there, and I know you coach some, that I was still playing 6 nights a week when I had 3 little kids. Well, having 3 little kids in your household means that from October through April, there's a cold that goes around all, so you have you have to learn how to sing when you have a cold and not hurt your voice as much as you can, if you want to keep the gigs and keep the money coming. So it's really important to learn how to sing correctly too, and yeah, because you don't want to damage your instrument.
No. Well, awesome. Well, before we finish off, I want to do a desert island driving range question for you. It's like
I got
a batter's box.
I got to put on my brains.
Yeah,
okay, I'm ready now.
All right, we're going to talk about mics, or how do you process, or what's the first thing you go to, or what do you use when it comes to guitar?
Guitar. My favorite thing to do with guitar is to take one of the amps that I have. I have an old Fender Vibrasonic amp, and then I have another one that there's only 2 of them in the world. It's this company that went bankrupt way back in the early 70s, and they made this amp called Cannon. It's I have the prototype, and it's one of the best amps that there is in the world. And there's only 2 of them in the world that I'm aware of. But my favorite thing to do is to mic up one of those, and I'll just use an old stock SM58 or something pointing sideways like you do. My favorite thing to do, which I never have time to do, is to take the amp and put it out in the garage or something, because I record it out of my home, and and maybe put three mics, so a close-up mic, another mic so I can use the natural reverb. I never have time to do that, and a lot of times I don't have time to actually mic up an amp, so I have that old kidney pod that I can't, whoever made that pod, I still have that. If I need to do stuff really quick, I'm on a deadline, I just plug the electric guitar through there. For acoustic guitar, it depends on the day, depends on the, and I've got, I might use a Sennheiser or SM58. I've got a very directional AKG 460 mic that I use. I will pull in, just for you, Steve, I pulled in my $3,000 my $3,000 Neumann TLM 170 here that I'm talking on today. But it's a great vocal mic. You wouldn't want to use that in everything, because to replace the little diaphragm thing in there, I think is $600. But, so you don't want to, you don't want to slam it around with your drums too much. But so I'll just experiment. I love experimenting on acoustic guitar. Although some of the mics pick up my squeaking too much, so I tend to do a little bit flatter on putting 2 mics on a acoustic guitar. Or there again, if I'm in a pinch and the electric guitar isn't prominent, it's just the acoustic guitar rather isn't prominent, I may just I just need a strumming way in the background. I may just grab an Ovation, stick it, run it straight through the board, and go that way if I'm in a hurry. But for any singer-songwriter, no, I got to use a real guitar. Not Ovation's not a real guitar, but you know what I mean.
Right. Well, yeah, it's actually I was listening to a little bit of a guy called Alec Benjamin. He's like top 40, and it sounds like all of his guitars are DI'd. It sounds like it's like none of his mic, and it's like, wow, that's DI'd. That's kind of a no-no. But it's working,
well, So. In this day and age, with all of the stuff that we can add and run them through, all of the gear that we have in our studios, I love micing an amp, but you kind of don't need to, most of the time. And especially in the business, if I'm working on an album or working on tracks that are going to be, on Spotify and all that, it's one thing. But if I'm doing background stuff that's going to be mostly background instrumental for TV shows, if I have time, I'll mic up the amps. But if I don't, I don't want to say this, but it doesn't matter.
It's mm-hmm.
It kind of doesn't matter. It's not so much about the immaculate sounds that you're going to get. It's about the vibe. Is the mood right for the scene?
Right.
That's the crux of it.
And a lot of the time, you're serving the director or the music supervisor. They want, as you said, attention cue. So they want that vibe that you nailed it. It's like they're not looking for production, because that's what the top 40 is looking for.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, that's great. That's really good. Well,
Yeah.
awesome, man. Well, it was so good to have you on the show.
Yeah. Good to be here. Good. Thanks.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to know the books, I've got the links below. And if you like it, like and subscribe, and we'll have to get you back, and we'll talk about your platinum record sales, maybe on the songwriting stuff.
Fun, man. Anytime. I've really enjoyed being here, and yeah, man. Anytime, just let me know. I loved hanging out with you and talking.
It's great fun. Awesome. All right, man. We'll have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.
Okay. See ya.
All right. See ya.